Why was she the only one who noticed the pilots weren't moving? She didn't want orange juice. She didn't want peanuts or the stupid in-flight trivia on the screen in front of her. What she wanted, what she needed, was to be up front, in the cockpit, seeing everything, touching everything, living the moment she'd only ever rehearsed 1,000 times behind a screen. Emily Carter was 12, but not the kind of 12 who doodled hearts on notebooks or memorized dance routines from her phone. Her mind wasn't in fashion or friendships. It was in altitude, fuel burn rates, engine torque, flight deck configuration. She could quote Boeing manuals better than bedtime stories. And now she was on one, a real Boeing 737-800. Not a simulator, not a dream. The vibration beneath her feet was real. The pressure in her chest as the aircraft lifted off real. The quiet hum of the sky outside the window. The thin edge of cloud against blue horizon. This was it everything. She'd imagined, except one thing. She wasn't flying it. That morning had started like every spring travel day. Denver International, warm light filtering through security checkpoints. But it wasn't a vacation. Not this time. Her father carried a velvet-lined urn tucked carefully inside his carry-on. Rachel Carter, U.S. Air Force drone pilot, call sign. Nostoke, mother, warrior was gone. 1 year since the training accident. 1 year since the voice that used to whisper flight checklists into her ear had gone silent. Cocoa Beach, Florida. That's where they were going. To scatter her ashes at the water's edge. But in seat 16A, staring past the wing, Emily Carter was watching something else. It started small, a shift of posture. The co-pilot leaned back too far, head bobbing, mouth moving like he was mumbling in sleep. A moment later, a coffee cup hit the floor. Captain Harris' calm, confident voice from earlier slumped forward, motionless. Dad? Her voice cracked like a window under pressure. Something's wrong. Her father blinked, half absorbed in an old photo of Rachel. What is it? The pilots, she said. They're not moving. She wasn't loud, but she was precise. That's how her mother taught her. Never panic, report. Observe. Confirm. Then, chaos bloomed in slow motion. The cockpit door cracked open. A flight attendant, Claire, the friendly one, burst out, her face white as snow. Her voice shook across the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is anyone on board with flying experience, please come forward. A few passengers chuckled nervously. Joke, right? Another delay or glitch, but Emily knew better. Her body felt it before her mind could form words. She stood. Her father grabbed her wrist. Emily, no, I have to try, she said. Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. You're 12. I know this plane. I've flown it 100 times. Simonad, I know what to do. His eyes were glass. Pain, fear, grief, but also trust. A thread of belief, woven from years of watching her build cockpits out of cardboard and correct adults about turbine startup sequences. He let go, and just like that, the aisle parted. One child, one walk forward. One beating heart trying not to fall out of rhythm with the world. Eyes followed her, some wide, some disbelieving. One woman gasped. One man muttered something about lawsuits, but no one stopped her. Maybe they thought she was just checking, or maybe they didn't know how close the edge really was. Emily stood at the threshold of the cockpit. Claire's lips parted in shock. Where are your? I can help. I know this aircraft, Boeing 737-800. I know the flight systems. I've practiced this. Claire hesitated. The air smelled of sweat and coffee and something metallic. Behind her, 2 grown men, trained pilots, were unconscious. There was no more time. Okay, Claire whispered. Come in. Emily stepped into the light. Not the glowing, heroic kind, the sterile, panic-laced kind. Warning lights blinked. The control yoke tilted slightly under autopilot. The oxygen masks hadn't dropped. Both men were pale, shallow breaths, no movement. This wasn't a fantasy. It was an emergency. Help me move them, Emily said. Her hands were trembling, but she still knew the switch layout by muscle memory. Claire helped pull the men into the jump seats. Their weight was heavy, more than dead weight. It was the weight of responsibility. Emily slid into the co-pilot's seat. Her feet barely reached the pedals, but her hands knew where to go. Avionics, engine readouts, MCP. The plane was still flying, but autopilot wouldn't last forever. She hit the radio. "Mayday, mayday. This is Flight 782. Both pilots are unconscious. Request immediate assistance." Silence. Then crackle. "Say again. Who is speaking?" She closed her eyes, breath deep. "My name is Emily Carter. I'm 12 years old. The pilots are unconscious. I'm in the co-pilot's seat. I need help." Silence. Long, stretched like a rubber band, then a voice. 12? "Yes, but I know what I'm doing. I swear I do." Far away. In Jacksonville Air Traffic Control. Donna Walsh froze. Her screen showed a stable flight path, but the voice, steady, young, clear, was rewriting everything she thought possible. "Okay. Emily, my name is Donna. I'm going to help you. Tell me your altitude." 30,000 feet. Airspeed 462, heading east-southeast. Pause. "That's correct." Emily exhaled slowly, not because it was over, but because now it had really begun. "I'm rerouting you to Augusta Regional," Donna said. "Smaller airport, quieter runway, safer landing." "Copy that." In the cabin, no one knew yet. Not really. Passengers were fidgeting, some starting to murmur. A man stood, asked Claire, "Who's flying this thing?" She didn't answer. Emily, meanwhile, was adjusting the heading. The plane banked slightly right. Just. As she told it to, 1 movement, 1 degree, one girl flying blind with everything to lose. Emily's hands were steady, but her breath kept trying to escape her chest. The plane banked gently to the right, heading 112, a small correction, but a massive shift. One small girl, guiding 75 tons of steel and 187 lives through empty sky. And no one out there could take the controls from her. Not Donna, not her dad. Not even her mother, whose ashes now sat quietly in the carry-on bag beneath seat 16B. She was utterly alone, except for the voice in her ear. "All right, kid," Donna said. Calm, reassuring. The kind of calm that felt earned. Not faked. "Let's do a systems check. My CP looks stable?" "Yes. Heading select engaged. Altitude hold steady." "Good. You're a natural." Emily didn't answer right away. She didn't know what to say to that. Being called a natural felt too big, too heavy. She didn't want to be special. She just wanted to keep the plane in the air. Then something flickered on the fuel panel. A slow, creeping blink she'd seen before in simulations. "Dana," she said. "Left tank's draining faster. Fuel imbalance." Dana's response wasn't panic, but it wasn't light either. "Copy that. Okay. Manageable. We'll balance it later." "You're doing everything right." But Emily didn't feel right. Her palms were damp now. The cockpit smelled like sweat and burnt plastic. The pilots behind her weren't moving, and every second ticked like a countdown she couldn't see. In the cabin, the murmurs were growing, passengers shifting, leaning into aisles, whispering half-truths that turned into rumors. "The pilots are dead," one man whispered. "No one's flying the plane," said another. Claire moved fast, her voice calm, her eyes anything but everything is under control. She repeated, "We're experiencing a minor issue, nothing more." But it wasn't enough. A man stood up halfway down the aisle, tall and sharp-voiced. "We deserve to know what's going on. Who's flying this aircraft?" Emily's father stood too. His voice didn't rise, but it landed. "My daughter is," he said, "and she's doing what none of us can. She's saving your life." The silence after that was sharp, cut with disbelief, but also something else. Respect, maybe awe. Back in the cockpit, Emily adjusted the altitude dial, descending to 24,000. She said, "Good. Donna confirmed. Nice and easy. You're flying this better than some commercial co-pilots I'm trained. And? You've never even been in a real cockpit before today? No, only the simulator. Well, you just passed the scariest check ride I've ever seen. All right, let's keep working. A jolt of turbulence rocked the plane. Not big, but sharp enough to make her hand slip off the throttle for a second. She froze. You okay? Donna asked. Emily didn't answer right away. Her fingers gripped the yoke again. She blinked rapidly. I'm scared, she whispered. There it was. Not the confession of someone failing, but the truth of someone who wasn't pretending anymore. Donna's voice softened. We all are, Emily. Even the best pilots. Fear's not weakness. It's your warning light. You listen to it, then you fly anyway. Emily nodded, her throat tight. Another light blinked voltage drop, switching to backup generator. She said. Donna whistled quietly. Sharp eyes. You caught that fast. The cockpit light steadied. Again, Emily leaned back for a second. Her body was buzzing like a live wire. She looked toward the window. Clouds spread below like a blanket of snow, and above it, endless sky. It looked peaceful, but that sky had no mercy. It wasn't rooting. For her, it wasn't against her either. It simply was a mirror, maybe. What you brought to it, it gave back. She pressed the intercom switch. Cabin crew, please ensure passengers are seated and calm. We're descending now. Claire's voice responded, tired but solid. Copy that. You're doing amazing, Emily. She sat alone in the captain's chair now. A borrowed seat, too big for her body, but somehow not too big for her resolve. Donna came back over the headset. We're within range of Augusta Regional. I've cleared the airspace. You've got the whole sky to yourself. Emily swallowed. Hard. Copy. Adjusting heading. On the navigation display, new lights appeared. Localizer is active. She said. I see the signal. Perfect. Donna replied. Start descent to 5,000 feet. We'll intercept the glide slope 4. Final approach. Altitude set, descending. But then something she hadn't expected. A whisper, a thought, a voice, maybe imagined. Her mother's voice. Calm is your co-pilot. Emily's breath slowed. She blinked. Looked down at the yoke. Taped there, almost forgotten, was a small photo of her mom in uniform. Smiling, not a fantasy, a reminder. She wasn't doing this alone. Not entirely. Dana, she said. Voice clearer. My mom was a pilot. She taught me not to freeze, even when it hurts. Silence. Then Donna replied. She taught you well. You're her legacy, Emily, and you're writing your own story now. In the cabin, Claire leaned over to Marcus. She's almost there, she whispered. She's going to land it. I know, he said. His hands were still trembling in the cockpit. Emily took a deep breath. She watched the clouds shift. She watched the airspeed stabilize. She watched the runway marker blink into view far. Off still, but real. Flaps 1, she said. The aircraft responded with a gentle tilt. She moved with it, like a dance she had practiced too many times to count. Speed reduced to 210 knots, holding course. You're locked in, Donna confirmed. You're doing it, Emily. But then another sharp beep, autopilot. Disengaged. The yoke moved. Emily grabbed it instantly. Her breath caught in her throat. Autopilot just disconnected. Copy that. Donna replied, You're flying now. All you, hands on the yoke, feet on rudders, just like the sim. Emily steadied herself, adjusted pitch, trimmed the throttle. The aircraft obeyed. Hesitant, but loyal. You're in control, Lil Captain, Donna said. Now let's bring this bird home. Emily looked ahead. Augusta's runway gleamed in the distance, lined with lights like a path through the dark. She adjusted for crosswind, soft rudder tap, slight aileron shift. Left crosswind, she reported. Correcting drift, the plane responded slowly. Surely, Donna whispered into her mic, unaware hands were shaking. You've already done more than some pilots do in a lifetime. Just hold steady. Final checklist coming next. And inside the cockpit, between flickering lights, the smell of adrenaline and the impossible pressure of being 12 years old. In charge of a commercial aircraft, Emily Carter whispered back, "Let's land this thing." What do you do when the plane is ready to land, but the world behind you is starting to fall apart? Emily adjusted the throttle with care. Her fingers, though smaller than most pilots, moved with the rhythm of someone who had done this before. Not in real life, but in muscle memory, in instinct, in trust. "Current speed 210 knots, she said into the headset. "Perfect," came Donna's calm voice. "Let S reduce slowly to 180. You'll need that for final descent." The yoke trembled slightly in her hands. Not much, but enough to remind her. This bird was real. Not software, not a game, a living thing with steel bones and turbine lungs. And every breath it took was under her guidance now. She reached for the flap lever, setting flaps to 5. Wind resistance increased. The nose dipped slightly. The aircraft adjusted, and so did she. Donna's voice returned. "Gentler now, Emily. You redoing beautifully." But even as she heard the words, she felt a ripple of unease under the surface. A flicker in the air pressure, a whisper in the walls. Something wasn't to right. "Dana," she said, "I think we've got a pressurization problem." Silence for 1 second. Then, "That would explain the pilot's hypoxia. You not showing symptoms?" "I'm okay," Emily replied, "but the cabin might not be." She flipped the internal intercom switch. "Claire, we have a pressure issue. Make sure everyone is seated. Use oxygen if needed. Stay calm." "Copy that," Claire answered, voice trembling. In the cabin, it was already too late for calm. Oxygen masks dangled now. One woman near the back hyperventilated. A baby cried. A man stood, fists clenched. "Who's flying this plane?" he shouted. Claire moved quickly. "Sir, please. Sit down. We need to know." He yelled. "Is it true? It's a child?" Whispers turned to panic. Someone shouted that the plane was crashing. A second man tried to open an overhead bin. That's when Marcus stood. "My daughter is flying this plane," he said. His voice wasn't too loud, but it cut through the noise like steel through fog. "She's trained. She's saving all of us, so sit down. And let her fly a beat too." Then, slowly, people began to quiet. Some in fear, some in awe, some simply unsure what to believe. But no one moved. Back in the cockpit, Emily heard none of it. She was listening to a different storm, voltage dropping. "Again," she said, switching to secondary bus, engaging APU. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "You keeping the systems alive," Donna said. "That's more than most adults could do in a simulator, let alone the sky." Emily didn't respond. She didn't feel brave. She felt like a wire stretched tight between two towers. One mistake away from snapping, but the yoke was still in her hands, and her heart, though loud, hadn't broken. "Okay, Emily," Donna continued. "Next up, ILS approach. Have you flown one before?" "Yes," Emily said. "Plenty of times in sim. We're going to intercept the localizer. Then glide slope, I'll talk you through it. Copy. Below." The Georgia coast shimmered through thinning clouds, tiny roads and rivers. A hint of runway lights just beyond the horizon. Set altitude to 3,000. Begin slowing to 150 knots. Set. Slowing now. The aircraft trembled again. Not turbulence, just nerves. Emily adjusted the rudder. Felt it shift beneath her feet. "You, readjusting beautifully," Donna said. "Stay with the center line." Outside the cockpit, rain began to spit against the windows. A storm, not yet here, but on its way. Inside, the temperature felt colder. Or maybe there was just the fear. Emily stared at the photo taped to the yoke. Her mom, laughing in her flight suit, eyes squinting against desert light. "I hope I'm doing this right," she whispered. Donna's voice came soft. "You redoing what she did, maybe more." Then came a sound she'd heard too many times in simulations, but never like this. The autopilot warning tone, a shrill, piercing blare. Her heart kicked. Autopilot disengaged, she said. "Manual control initiated." "Copy that," Donna replied instantly. "You got it, Emily. Stay calm, just like the sim. Eyes on horizon, yoke steady." She wrapped her fingers tighter around the controls. The plane dipped slightly. A gust from the side pushed against the right wing. Emily responded. Fast, subtle rudder tap. Slight aileron correction. "Left crosswind," she said. "Exactly," Donna whispered. "Let her talk to you, you know." This dance, in the cabin, Claire sat down and buckled herself in. Her knuckles were white. The passengers sat frozen, watching the window, the floor, the air itself. But not one scream, not anymore. They were all waiting for her, Emily Carter, 12 years old. No license, no co-pilot, just heart, and a promise she refused to break. Approach speed 145 knots, flaps full, gear down, she called. The plane clunked as the landing gear extended. Green lights confirmed lock. "You relined up with runway 17, Donna said. "Runway length is 8,000 feet. You allow have more than enough if you stay centered." Emily swallowed hard. Final descent. "Beginning. Visual on the runway confirmed," Donna whispered. "Then bring her home." The plane dropped through 1,500 feet. Wind gusted again. Sharp this time. She gripped tighter. "Wind shear," she said, correcting. Her heart raced. Her shoulders burned, but her grip didn't. To loosen in the tower. Donna Walsh stood with her hands on the console, holding her breath. She's flying it in by hand. She muttered. 12 years old and hand-flying a 737. A tech nearby whispered. She shouldn't even be able to reach the pedals. Donna didn't to blink. "She's more pilot than half the people I've vet-trained." Emily's voice returned. "Altitude 900, speed steady, lined up on glide path." "You, perfect," Donna said. "Get ready for flare." In the back, passengers closed their eyes. Marcus Carter whispered into his hands. "You can do it, baby girl." Just like the sim. Inside the cockpit, Emily whispered to herself. I got this. 400 feet. Flare at 30 feet, Donna instructed. "Thrust idle, back pressure. You know this." "Copy." The runway lights shimmered. Through mist, the plane dipped, aligned, ready 30 feet. Emily pulled back. 20, 10, main gear touched down. Soft bounce, wheels screaming. Reverse thrust engaged. She tapped the brakes, felt the pressure change. The aircraft slowed, stopped. Speed. 60 knots, turning onto taxiway Bravo, silence. Then a voice over the radio. "You read down." "You did it, Emily." But she didn't to respond. She was still flying inside, still holding on to the storm in her chest, the electricity in her bones, until she finally exhaled and whispered, safe. The door opened. Her father was the first to enter the cockpit, eyes full of tears. "You did it," he said. "You really did it." Emily looked at her hands, shaking. Real, alive. "Was that real?" she whispered. He hugged her so hard, she thought her ribs would break. "It was real," he said. "And you saved every one of us." Outside, applause roared inside. The girl who was never supposed to fly just landed a Boeing 737, and the world was never going to forget her name. The rain came seconds after the landing, as if it had been chasing them. Thunder rolled above Augusta Regional Airport as emergency crews swarmed the tarmac. Fire trucks in formation, paramedics with stretchers, airport personnel waving flashlights. A blur of urgency surrounded the plane, but inside, it was quiet. too quiet. Emily Carter sat motionless in the co-pilot's seat. Her arms felt like jelly, her lungs burned. Her eyes, dry from blinking too hard too long, were locked on the now still instrument panel. No more beeping, no more warnings. Just a hum of cooling systems and fading tension. The door creaked open. Emily, her dad's voice said, almost reverently. She turned slowly. He looked like someone who had just stepped off a roller coaster in the dark. Pale, sweating, but smiling. Tears ran freely now. No shame, no restraint. "You did it," he whispered. "You did it, baby." Emily blinked. Was that real? He knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. "It was real, and you saved every one of us." One by one, others stepped into the cockpit. Flight attendants, passengers, strangers with shaking hands and wide eyes. Some cried, some tried to speak but couldn't. Others just looked at her as if they were seeing a myth made flesh. She didn't know how to react. Outside the window, blue uniforms and reflective vests moved quickly. Paramedics reached the unconscious pilots and began checking vitals. Captain Harris stirred weakly. His eyes fluttered open. "What happened?" he rasped. "You blacked out," the medic told him. "Hypoxia. Pressurization system failure. You lucky." The pilot groaned, trying to sit up. His eyes wandered toward the seat he was supposed to be in, and then to the girl who had taken it. "You flew my aircraft?" he asked, his voice thin. Emily didn't say anything at first, but the medic did. She flew it, and she landed it perfectly. Captain Harris blinked, processing. Then he muttered, "I need a drink." A few minutes later, Emily stepped down onto the stairs of the aircraft. The air hit her like a wave-wet electric heavy, and then came the noise. Cheers. Applause erupted from the crowd gathered at the edge of the tarmac. News crews, bystanders, airport staff. A firefighter stared and whispered, "She's just a kid." Another replied, "No, she's a damn pilot." Flashes burst from cameras. Voices shouted questions she couldn't make out, but Emily didn't answer. She didn't wave. She didn't even smile. Her eyes drifted upward to the sky. The same sky she had just come down from only. Now, it felt different. It had let her in, and she come back whole. Inside the airport terminal, chaos rang. Phones buzzed. Reporters scrambled. News tickers already called it a miracle. Child lands passenger jet 187. Lives saved. Clips had already gone viral, passenger videos showing the landing. The panic, the calm voice over the intercom that no one realized belonged to a 12-year-old girl. In a quieter corner of the terminal, Emily sat wrapped in a dry blanket, sipping hot chocolate someone had handed her. Her fingers finally still, her knees aching. She stared at the cup for a long time. Then a new figure appeared, one she recognized only by voice. Emily? Dana Walsh stood nearby, headset still around her neck, escorted by FA staff. She knelt gently beside the girl. "You even braver in person," Dana said with a smile. "You shorter than I imagined," Emily replied. They both laughed quiet, shaky laughter, the kind that comes after too much adrenaline and not enough sleep. Dana studied her for a moment. "What you did up there shouldn't have been possible. You had no certifications, no co-pilot, no training." "I had a simulator," Emily said. Dana shook her head. "That simulator didn't land the plane. You did." Her voice grew serious. "You stayed calm under pressure. You diagnosed a pressurization failure, communicated with a TC, executed a crosswind manual landing. Do you know what that means?" Emily looked down. "That I didn't mess up. That you were born to fly." Elsewhere in the terminal, FOD investigators were already combing over flight data. The malfunction was traced quickly. A faulty bleed air valve, just one part, just one failure. That's all it took. The next visitor surprised her. Captain Harris, pale and slow-moving, entered a private room where Emily waited with her father. He leaned against the wall, his breathing still shallow, but his voice, though scratchy, held weight. You didn't just save lives, he said. You saved my plane. I just did what I could, Emily replied. He pulled something from his pocket. A set of gold pilot wings. I've only given these away once before, he said, to my daughter on her wedding day, but today, I'd be honored if you accepted them. Emily's eyes welled. She took them with both hands. Thank you, Captain. No, he replied. Thank you, Captain. That night, the airline booked them a hotel, gave her access to therapy, room service, privacy, but she couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching. Lightning fork across the distant sky. The storm that had chased them now drifted away, leaving stars scattered behind. Her father joined her. How are you feeling? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Tired, alive, weird. That is a good answer. They stood together for a while. Then she whispered, Do you think Mom would have been proud? He nodded instantly. She would. Vess saluted you, Emily. Smiled softly. She always said I had her stubborn streak. She also said you had her guts. She looked down at the wings in her hand. Not plastic, not imagined, real. Steel and sky. She would have wanted you to fly for real, her dad. Sod. Not just in games. I want to, Emily replied. I think I always have. The next morning, the world had changed. Her face was on every screen. The girl who saved Flight 782, Kid Captain, hero at 30,000 feet. Interview requests flooded in. There was a voicemail from NASA, an invitation from the White House, a handwritten letter from the president. A school in Japan sent a drawing. A girl from Pakistan wrote, Before I saw you, I didn't know girls like us could fly. Now I know. We can. Emily folded that letter into her backpack. She carried it everywhere. But fame came with its own turbulence. Cameras followed her to school. Classmates grew awkward, some envious, some obsessed. She missed being invisible. Missed being just the kid with airplane posters on her bedroom walls. And in the quiet hours, doubt crept in. Could I just get lucky? Could I do it again? Was it real? Or did I just survive? Her dad saw it too. One evening, after a long day of interviews, he found her sitting on the floor, staring at her simulator. You know, he said, even real pilots doubt themselves. She looked up. Mom ever doubt? He smiled. After her first night flight, she came home crying, swore she wasn't to cut out for it. What did she do? She flew again. The next morning, Emily nodded slowly. So I should keep flying? He didn't answer with words. He just looked at her, and she understood. The sky wasn't finished with her yet. How do you go back to normal when you've touched the sky? Emily Carter sat at her simulator again, but something had changed. It used to be her sanctuary, her escape, a place where no one asked anything of her but focus. But now, the joystick felt lighter, the stakes heavier. Her hands hovered over the familiar buttons. And all she could think about was the weight of the real yoke, the hum of real engines, the flicker of warning lights that didn't come from code, but from life. Flight 782 had ended, but something inside her hadn't landed yet. She wasn't famous. In her bedroom, not when the walls were still covered in posters, not when her pajamas didn't fit like a uniform, and yet her inbox had messages from astronauts, news anchors, strangers around the world. One company sent her a leather jacket with her name embroidered above the heart. Captain Emily Carter. She tried it on once. It felt like someone else. At school, things were different. Too different. Some classmates stared like she was a celebrity. Others whispered when she passed. A few boys clumsily asked for photos. One girl, who they'd never spoken to her before, tried to braid her hair during math class, and still none of it felt real. Her teachers asked about her plans. Her counselor offered adjustment support, her pay coach said. I knew there was something special about you, but Emily didn't want to be special. She wanted to be capable. That's what her mother had always said. Being special fades. Being capable saves lives. So she got to work, not for cameras, not for applause, for herself. She returned to her simulator not to relive the landing, but to understand it. What systems failed? Why didn't the oxygen masks deploy? Could she have descended sooner? Should she have? She studied flight data logs, read NTSB case files, pored over black box reports. Not because someone told her to, because she had to know. Dana Walsh, her voice in the sky, kept in touch. They'd email now and then. Dana sent her articles, checklists. A few stories from her 20 years in a TC. She always signed them the same way. Keep holding the sky, DTHEN. One day, Dana sent something else. A name, Tom Harper, retired commercial pilot. 18,000 logged hours. Taught flight school in Colorado. He didn't take on new students often. But when Dana called him and said, that's the one who flew 782, he said, send her. Their first meeting was in a dusty little airfield just outside Denver. Tom was in his 60s, wore a trucker hat, smelled faintly of jet fuel and coffee. When he saw Emily, he looked her up and down. You landed a 737, he said, before passing algebra. She blinked. I've passed algebra now. He grinned. Then we good to go. They started with the basics. Cessna 172. Clunky, underpowered, but perfect for real-world training. It was small. It was loud. It smelled like oil and old vinyl. But the moment the wheels lifted off the ground, something inside Emily clicked. This wasn't T-fame. This was flying. The kind that came with wind, weather, and weight. The kind you earned. Week after week, she flew with Tom. Steady climbs, soft descents, barrel turns, stall recoveries. Crosswind landings he never praised too. Quickly, but when he did, it landed like gold. They got the hands. He said once, you done to fight the plane. You listened to it. At school. Her confidence returned. But not from attention, from knowledge. She gave a presentation on cockpit automation, breaking down exactly how Flight 782's system failed. Her classmates, who once rolled their eyes at her obsessions, sat in stunned silence. You should be a pilot, one boy whispered after class. She smiled. That was the plan. And then, the day came, her first supervised solo. She was 14 now. Almost 15, taller, stronger, quieter in ways only the sky could explain. The plane was ready, the air was clear. Her nerves? Not so much. Tom stood at the edge of the runway, arms folded. You ready, Captain? She stared at the aircraft. Her aircraft, I think I've always been. The engine roared to life. The runway rolled past in a blur. The nose lifted, and she was airborne, alone, free. No passengers, no emergency. Just sky and steel and the whisper of possibility. 30 minutes later, she landed smoother than ever. She taxied to the hangar, shut down the engine, climbed out. Tom was waiting. He didn't clap, didn't cheer, just nodded once. Welcome to the sky, Captain Carter. She laughed, quiet, unshaken. Laughter. This time, there was no panic, no storm. Just pride. For the first time since Flight 782, she felt it. Not survival, mastery. Back home. She updated her flight logbook. Then she opened her private journal, the one she didn't show to anyone, across. The top, she wrote, Lessons from 782 continued. Below, she added, Don't. To someone else to act. Flying ice and tea about fame. That's about listening. Fear dosing? Tea means stop. It means look harder. You never really alone up there. Courage comes in quiet decisions. The sky dosing to care how old. You are, but you should. Then she added one more. The miracle wasn't T landing the plane. The miracle was knowing I could. 3 years had passed since Flight 782. Emily Carter was no longer the nervous girl trembling in an oversized cockpit seat. She had grown taller. But more than that, she had grown quieter, grounded. The kind of quiet that comes from knowing exactly who you are, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. At 15, she stood on solid earth, but her soul still lived in the sky. The world hadn't forgotten her. The media frenzy had faded. But what remained was something deeper. Respect, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that whispers in the halls of airfields, where flight instructors told her story like a legend. The girl who landed a 737 when no one else could. But Emily didn't chase the myth. She chased mastery. She logged every hour in her flight book like it mattered, because it did. She trained relentlessly, not for headlines, but for understanding, not for applause, but for control. Her instructors often said, "She doesn't teaches fly planes, she listens to them." On her 15th birthday, she was assigned her first flight in a twin-engine aircraft, an advanced trainer reserved for top students. Tom Harper, now more mentor than instructor, met her on the tarmac early that morning. "You ready?" he asked. No hint of condescension, just trust. Emily smiled. Always. They soared over the Colorado mountains, twin engines humming like music. The controls were more responsive. The turns tighter, the climb steeper. She performed precision. Turns, stall recoveries, barrel rolls, and then a perfect crosswind landing. Tom didn't say much when they taxied in. Just leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. "You remember what I said when we first met?" Emily grinned. "Yeah, you hoped you'd never be on board if I landed another jet." He snorted. "Well, if you do at least now, I'll trust the landing." That night, back in her room, Emily stared at a framed photo on the wall. Flight 782 parked. On the tarmac in Augusta, below it, a small brass plaque read, "In the absence of fear, there is clarity. In the heart of a child, there is flight." Next to it, a shadow box inside, her F.A. student wings. Dana Walsh, S controller badge, Captain Harris, S airline wings, the ones he'd taken off his own uniform and pinned to her coat. Tokens of a moment that changed everything. Emily opened her flight journal and scribbled her final entry for the day. Altitude 11,500 feet. Conditions clear. Notes: sky still feels like home. Then came the invitation, the International Youth Aviation Summit in Seattle. Hundreds of students from around the world, guest speakers from NASA, Boeing, the Air Force, and her name, printed at the top of the speaker schedule. Keynote: Emily Carter. Flight 782. What the sky taught me. The night before her speech, Emily walked the empty stage alone. Rows of empty chairs stretched before her. She didn't feel nervous. Not because she was fearless, but because this, like flying, wasn't about her. It was about what could be possible if someone believed in themselves just enough to try. The next day, as she stepped into the spotlight, she looked out at a sea of young faces. Some held notebooks, others held dreams behind their eyes. She took a breath. 3 years ago, she began. I landed a plane I had no business flying. A few chuckles, some wide eyes. I was 12, scared, alone. I kept thinking someone else should be doing it. Someone older, trained, certified. Pause, but there was no one else. Just me. The room went silent. And in that moment, I learned something I'll never forget. Courage doesn't to wait for permission. It shows up when it's needed. Applause thundered afterward. Dozens of students lined up to meet her. A boy from Brazil clutched his notebook and said, "I want to be a pilot now." Because of you, a girl from Japan handed her a drawing Emily with wings, smiling. She signed every notebook, hugged every kid, took every picture. But it wasn't about ego. Not anymore. It was about duty. The story no longer belonged just to her. It belonged to every kid who ever been told they weren't old enough, smart enough, strong enough. Emily Carter was proof that sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who's already ready. A few months later, her father surprised her. A weekend trip to Washington, D.C. turned out to be more than a trip. At the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, past moonlanders and warbirds, they arrived at a new exhibit, Flight 782, The Miracle Descent. Emily stopped cold. Behind glass stood the original cockpit seat from the aircraft. Next to it, a photo of her, age 12, headset too big, hands steady, eyes locked on horizon. A plaque read, when both pilots blacked out mid-flight. One young girl stepped up and saved 187 lives. This seat is where courage sat. She blinked. I Don. Do you feel like a museum piece? You re-not, her father said softly. You re-proof. Proof that when a child is raised to believe in themselves, there are no limits. Emily stood for a long time. Just looking at the seat, she could still feel it. The cold leather, the weight of the moment, and then, like wind through a hangar, she felt something else. Purpose. Later that night, in the quiet of their hotel room, she held a small silver tag in her hand. It was from the original plane, Flight 782. A mechanic had salvaged it and mailed it to her months ago. She kept it on her keychain now, not because it was shiny, but because it reminded her what mattered, not the landing, the choice not to give up. Because the truth was, it wasn't the simulator that made her a pilot. It was the storm and the fact that she stayed in it even when it would have been easier to let go. Can you ever be ordinary again after doing something that changed the world? By 16, Emily Carter wasn't famous anymore. At least, not in the way the world had first known her. The headlines had faded. The talk shows stopped calling. The crowds moved on to newer stories. But Emily didn't mind. In fact, she preferred the silence. Because in the quiet, she could fly. She now wore a flight suit that fit her name perfectly, Carter, stitched above the heart, just like her mother once was. Her wings were no longer borrowed, they were earned, and the cockpit was no longer a place of crisis. It had become her sanctuary. On the ground, she was still a teenager, still figuring out life like everyone else. But in the sky, she was something else, not a legend, not a miracle, a pilot. The difference was everything. Every few months, she returned to Augusta, not because she had to, but because she needed to. Like visiting a grave you've never buried. They stand at the edge of the runway, eyes on the air, and sometimes, when no one was looking, they whisper, "I'm still flying, Mom," and she was. Tom Harper continued to guide her training. She logged more hours than any other young pilot in her program. She flew through rainstorms and updrafts, practiced engine-out procedures, studied weather radar like poetry. Tom once told a visiting flight examiner, "She doesn't ask where the plane is going. She tells it." At school, things were steadier now. Most people treated her normally. A few still whispered when she passed. But mostly, she blended, gave presentations on flight automation, helped her science teacher design a lesson on cabin pressurization, joined the school's engineering club. She no longer chased attention. She chased answers. One afternoon, while clearing out old storage boxes in the garage, Emily came across her old simulator setup, the one she had trained on before Flight 782. The plastic yoke, the clunky monitor, the foam-padded seat her dad had built from scraps. She sat in it again, just to feel it. It was too small now, the software out of date. But her fingers still knew every switch. She smiled. It had once been enough. It had once saved lives, and it had given her a dream. Now that dream was reality. That week, Dana Walsh flew out to Colorado to surprise her. They met for lunch at a quiet cafe near the airfield. Dana wore civilian clothes, now retired from active tower duty, but her voice still held that steady hum of authority that had once guided Emily through storm and fear. "I wanted to see for myself," Dana said, stirring her coffee. "Wanted to know if the sky still listens to you." Emily smiled faintly. "Some days it does." They talked about everything, about weather systems, about new FAA safety protocols inspired by Flight 782, about the legislation that now required secondary oxygen override training for all commercial aircraft staff. Then Dana leaned forward. "You?" "No," she said. "There is something I never told you." Emily looked up. Vet trained thousands of pilots, talked to even more. But that day, when you came on the radio, I didn't hear fear. I heard a pilot." Emily looked away. The words sat heavy, but not in a bad way. In a true way. After lunch, they stood by the hangar, watching small planes taxi past. Dana handed her something wrapped in cloth. "What is this?" "A gift," Dana said, "from someone who says she never got the chance to say thank you properly." Emily unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small metal placard, hand-engraved, "To the one who proved that instinct can be louder than experience, and that sometimes the sky waits for no one except the brave." R.C., her mother, her initials. Emily ran her thumb over the letters. Dana said nothing more, just placed a hand on her shoulder, then walked away. That night, Emily didn't go home right away. She took the Cessna out again. Just her. The air was cold, the moon was high, and the runway was empty. She took off gently, climbed slowly, and leveled out at 8,000 feet. The world below was silent, the towns like freckles of light, the stars like instruments in the dark. She flew for over an hour, saying nothing, just listening, to the engine, to the sky, to herself. When she landed, Tom was waiting by the hangar, not expecting her but not surprised either. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than okay," she said, and she meant it, because finally, after years of being asked who she was, what she did, how she survived, she finally had her own answer. She wasn't the girl who got lucky. She wasn't the girl who just happened to be there. She was a pilot, because she trained, because she cared, because she stayed calm when others couldn't. Because she refused to give up. And somewhere between the takeoffs and the turbulence, she found something stronger than survival, conviction. When the world forgets the moment, you carry it. When they remember, you carry them too. The day started with rain in Seattle, the kind that soaked through your jacket, even when you ran. The International Youth Aviation Summit was packed students from over 40 countries, wide-eyed and buzzing with nerves. And somewhere in that crowd stood a 17-year-old girl with a warm backpack, a silver tag on her keychain, and a name stitched in blue across her flight jacket. Captain Emily Carter. She didn't like the title, not because she hadn't earned it, but because she didn't. To fly for titles, she flew for clarity. The summit was loud, glittery, almost overwhelming. Flags hung from the ceiling. Company banners swayed over display booths. NASA, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, everyone here wanted to be something. Emily just wanted to be herself, but she knew what she represented now. She was no longer the story. She was the torch. The keynote speaker that year was a test pilot from NASA, Dr. Sandra Karofsky, first woman to fly the X-59 experimental jet. But before Dr. Karofsky took the stage, the lights dimmed and a new name was called. Please welcome Emily Carter. The applause started before she reached the mic. She stood at the podium, adjusting the collar of her flight suit. The room, hundreds of teenagers, teachers, mentors, held its breath. Emily's hands were steady, her voice low. "Sure, 3 years ago, I was just a girl who loved clouds and engines," she began. "I built cockpits out of cardboard, memorized Boeing schematics like bedtime stories. But I wasn't a pilot. a few chuckles. I was 12 when I boarded Flight 782, and everything I thought I knew about fear, about responsibility, about who I was, changed. She paused, looked out at the crowd. I didn't to land that plane because I was brave. I landed it because there was no one else to do it, and I was too scared not to try. Now the room was silent. No phones, no scribbling. Pens, just focus. I've learned something since then. Courage doesn't feel like a battle cry. It feels like silence, like a breath in your throat and a voice in your headset saying, just hold the sky. She paused again. This time, longer. Everyone. Ask what it felt like to land a 75-ton jetliner at 12 years old. And the truth is, it felt like doing what I was born for. She leaned forward slightly. So if you, sitting there, thinking, I am too young, too small, too unqualified, let me tell you this. The moment one. To ask your age. It ask your heart. The audience. Exploded, standing ovation. Applause that felt like thunder over a runway. Afterward, students lined up around the building. A girl from Tunisia handed her a model plane. A boy from Iceland gave her his captain's badge from flight school, whispering, you reminded me why I started. A girl from El Salvador simply said, when I feel afraid in the cockpit, I think of you. Emily didn't know what to say, so she just said, keep flying. That night, she found a quiet place behind the convention center, sat on the edge of the docks, looked up at the stars. Her fingers drifted to the silver tag on her keychain, Flight 782. She rubbed it between her fingers like a compass. Years passed. Emily Carter earned her private license, then her commercial one. She studied aerospace engineering, interned with cockpit designers, worked on improving emergency oxygen systems, starting with the flaw that nearly took down her first flight. She didn't to brag, didn't to post, but in every cockpit she entered, she brought one thing that couldn't be taught: stillness, not the absence of fear, the clarity in spite of it. One day, a news anchor asked her on a live interview, Emily, what moment defined your journey? Was it the landing? She smiled, shook her head. It wasn't. To when I landed the plane, she said softly. It was when I realized I could have given up and didn't. That quote went viral again, but Emily didn't. Notice. She was busy flying on the 5th anniversary of Flight 782. She returned to Augusta for a private memorial. No cameras, no speeches, just her father, a few flight attendants. Claire was there, still working for the airline. Captain Harris, retired now, grayer, slower, but still with those pilot's eyes. They stood in front of the museum display. Same seat, same photo, same plaque. This is where courage sat. Claire placed a single white flower below the glass. Her hand shook. Captain Harris stepped forward. You know, he said to Emily, they used to say pilots were born, not made. I never believed it. He turned to her. I do now. Emily just nodded, her eyes wet. Then she stepped back. She didn't need to speak. The moment had already said everything. Back in Denver, she kept flying. Small planes, charter flights, test aircraft. She spoke at schools, helped design safety curriculum for young pilots, mentored kids who felt invisible, especially girls who were told to pick something safer. One summer, she received a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address. Dear Captain Carter, I am 12. I'm scared all the time. People say I am weird for liking planes. I don't talk much. I don't fit in. I read about you. And now, when I feel small, I imagine I am sitting next to you in a cockpit, just listening, just flying. If you can do it, maybe I can, too. Thank you. No name. Just another girl with clouds in her head. Emily folded the letter carefully. She placed it inside her flight logbook, right next to her old simulator checklist. And finally, years later, she was cleared for her first commercial flight. Co-pilot, of course, but still, She ran her fingers along the frame of the cockpit window as she stepped inside. The seat creaked. The controls blinked to life. The captain beside her smiled, unaware of the history walking in beside him. Emily sat down, fastened her harness, ran the checklist at the bottom of her tablet screen. A tiny note she, written to herself, calm as your co-pilot. You've already flown further than most ever will. The tower crackled. Flight 429. Cleared for takeoff. Wind calm, sky yours. Emily smiled, hands on the throttle, eyes on the sky. And in her mind one voice whispered softly, the same voice she had carried through all the years. Let us bring this bird home, because sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and sometimes legends don't begin with noise. They begin with silence and a 12-year-old girl who refuses to panic.